wife and I decided to move from the big city life and relocate to the small city of Salem, Oregon. Now, this decision was not made lightly, and in fact, it weighed really heavy on us. We're not just uprooting ourselves, but our family. We have two small kids, a 7-year-old and a 3-year-old, and we knew this would have a big effect on them as well. And so we contemplated for quite some time of whether this was going to be the right move for us. We are both from a big city, from Los Angeles, and so we are used to what a large city has to offer. All of the amenities, so many options, a big nightlife, and just that fast pace that we were so used to living. Being surrounded by so many people and so many different cultures, this is what we were so used to. However, as time went on and we were raising our kids, we realized this is not what we wanted anymore. Sure, it was great for us back in our older life, but for raising families, we wanted something different. We wanted somewhere where we were going to be surrounded more by nature and less by big buildings, brick and steel and glass that just didn't appeal to us anymore. We wanted to feel like we can breathe a sense of fresh air, figuratively and literally. We were tired of the congestion in a big city. We were tired of just feeling like we were so tight with so many people around. We were tired of the traffic. We were tired of how long it took to get from point A to point B, literally just sitting idling on the highway. We wanted to live in a place where we can feel more connected to the city, more connected to the people, and where the community comes out and really participates and rallies around the different activities and community events put on throughout the year. And so these are some of the reasons why we made the move. And in this video, I'm going to go over what it was like for us to transition from a big city to a smaller town like Salem, Oregon. Now, the biggest adjustment for me was just getting used to the sheer population difference. Now, coming from a big city like Los Angeles, we had 4 million people in the city, 10 million in the county. I know those are absurd numbers. You may be coming from a city that's a bit smaller, 1 million people, a little under, a little over. But either way, in Salem, there's only about 200,000 people. Now, for me personally, it was a big shock to the system. I was just used to seeing people all the time, all over. And there was something strangely comforting for that. Now, it's hard to explain that to someone who is from a small town, and maybe you'll understand it from a big city. Just seeing the amount of buildings, the amount of people just always, there's always action, there's always activity. When I came to Salem, the slow pace of life was almost shocking to me. It's something that we wanted, but it still took a little bit of time of getting used to. Not seeing a lot of people around, seeing sometimes empty roads in the evening, just not used to that in the big city. We live in West Salem, so we're even a little further out than the city center, surrounded by farmland. Just not used to that. I mean, our whole city is surrounded by agriculture, farmland, wine country, and we just didn't get that in a large city. You can drive for miles and miles and miles and really not see much nature, certainly not farms, certainly not wineries. And so it was a little bit of a shock to the system and getting adjusted to that point. Coming from a big city, and if you enjoy the downtown lifestyle, well, then you have blocks and blocks, if not miles, of that offered to you in a large city. Well, in Salem, there's really only 4 square blocks. I mean, it's a little bit larger. There's probably more like 7 square blocks, but a lot of that's taken up by government buildings. We are the capital of Oregon here in Salem. So really the entertainment spots, like restaurants, retail shopping, coffee, bars, and other amenities, really it's only 4 square blocks, and you can walk from one end of downtown to the other about 10-15 minutes. So it's really small. Also, you're gonna have to get used to places closing earlier, like around 6 p.m. for a lot of the retail establishments, 8, 9, and maybe 10 p.m. for some of the restaurants, especially during the weekdays. On the weekends, a little bit longer hours. But even if you go to the restaurants and bars around that 9, 10 o'clock, it's going to be pretty quiet. It's not going to be hopping like you're used to in a large city where people are just out throughout the night enjoying the big nightlife. City of Salem is really quiet, even in the evenings, even when places are still open. And then some places don't even open on Sundays. So that was a little bit different too, because in the big city, things are open 7 days a week, and it feels almost like 24 hours a day. And if you're in the downtown area, you're only really 20 minutes away from getting outside of the city limits for Salem. And at that point, now you're in the agriculture, the farmland, and the vineyards and the wineries. So when I say small cities, not just population-wise, but geographically, it's pretty small. Now, the city of Salem is, when I say it's small, it's still kind of spread out. You still have to drive to get to many of your amenities, kind of regardless of where you're living. There are certain neighborhoods that you're going to be closer, like South Salem has more amenities than West Salem, for example. But in general, it's going to take you 10 to 20 minutes to kind of get anywhere throughout the city itself. And if you're coming from a big city, you know driving 10 to 20 minutes barely gets you outside of your neighborhood. Now, while all of these were adjustments for us, we do truly enjoy it. It's exactly what we wanted. It's exactly what we're looking for. We love the cute charm of the downtown area for Salem. We love that we don't have to drive forever to get where we want to go. We love being surrounded by nature. We love being surrounded by trees, the farms. We love all of that. And that was a big driving force for us to move out of the city into a smaller town. And Salem does have that small town feel, even though it acts like a bigger city in many ways. So you still have everything that you need here. You're not going to lack anything here except for maybe some options. You're not going to have as many of the same types of places that you would in a big city. But in general, that's just kind of an illusion of choice. At least for my family and I, we had so many options, so many choices living in a big city. But frankly, we frequented the places that we enjoyed. We found the spots that we liked, and we would just go back there. Sure, we like to try new spots, new areas, but we pretty much were creatures of habit. We found the restaurants that we enjoyed, the retail areas that we really liked, and we just went back there. So when you're living in a smaller town like Salem, it takes a little bit of adjustment to get used to those lack of options, but you get used to it pretty quickly. As a reminder, I'm Dave Fein with the Real Estate Dads at eXp Realty, a local real estate agent right here in Salem, Oregon, and my team and I have helped and love helping many people relocate to and from the city of Salem. So if you're thinking about making that move, make sure you're reaching out to the contact information below. If you're liking what you see, subscribe to the channel to get more videos, hit the like button, comment below. Would love to hear what some of your concerns are about moving from a big city to a smaller town. I'll be happy to answer those questions in the comments. And of course, again, if you reach out to me directly, we can have a more one-on-one conversation. The next thing you're gonna have to get used to is the lack of nightlife. Now, if you're coming from a big city, you know that you've got a lot of options, a lot of places that stay open late, bars, clubs, concert venues, comedy clubs, even retail. Everything that you can imagine stays open pretty late in a large city. At least in the city of LA, restaurants were popping at 10 p.m. Places are open till midnight, 2 a.m., and it was lively. A lot of action, a lot of people out and about. Well, in Salem, you're not going to have that at all. It is the exact opposite. Things close early, as I mentioned before, not just in the downtown area, but in general. Actually, if you go outside of downtown, places close even earlier. Many of the restaurants stop serving around 8 p.m. Some will extend till 10 p.m. But again, you're not going to see a lot of people out and about taking advantage of that. And if you're out and about later in the evening, you're not going to see a lot of people joining you. It's very quiet. The streets are pretty empty. There's not a lot of hustle, not a lot of bustle. And people are a little bit more stay at home here in Salem. And if you're into clubs, we really don't have any here in Salem. You're going to have to go to Portland, which is about an hour north of here, or Eugene, which is about an hour, 20 hour, 30 minutes south of here. If you're into big concert venues, we really don't have that either here in Salem. We've got small concert venues. We've got an outdoor concert area at Riverfront Park, which is kind of cool, but it's not used all that often for concerts. When we have the state fair, we have musical groups come in and they take advantage of that, but that's only kind of like a 2-week thing. So again, if you're really into that type of scene, Salem's not going to be the right place for you. People are gathering more in the home, more of home parties, not crazy house parties, but just people having fun, a little bit more leisure, a little bit more laid back here in Salem. So for my family and I, it actually fits us just perfectly. We are in our 40s and we're just not into the whole club scene, not going out late at night. We've got 2 young kids. We get our date nights pretty infrequently, but when we get them, we do enjoy them. We do take advantage of the places that are staying open a little bit later, but we're just not out there going to the bars. We're not bar hopping. We're not clubbing. We're not going to concerts all the time. I'm a huge sports fan. I love going to sporting events. I wish there was more of that in Salem. We don't have any professional sports teams here. We got to go to Portland for that. But in general, we live a little bit of a quieter life now that we've got 2 young kids. And so that small city just fits us perfectly. We don't need that nightlife. So if you don't need that as much anymore, if you don't feel like you're going to miss that as much, then Salem's going to be the right spot for you. But if you feel like you're definitely taking advantage of that, you're going to want to look north and maybe look at Portland area instead of Salem if you're thinking about moving to Oregon. Another adjustment, or I shouldn't really say adjustment, but an advantage from moving from a big city to Salem is that there is just less traffic, less congestion, and it's blissful. I stayed in the car for hours on the road sometimes while working or just trying to get my kids to the museum or whatever event they're doing, some sporting event, some tournament. And we were sitting on the road for an hour just to get there and an hour to get back, and it was driving us crazy. The kids are uncomfortable. They're annoyed in the car, which doesn't help your zen when you're in the car. And so when we got out of that mess of living in a big city and we got to experience what really no traffic is like. Now, don't get me wrong, there is some traffic in Salem, and if you talk to the locals, it has gotten worse during the rush hour times in the morning and in the evening. Because it's a smaller town, you don't have mass transportation. I'll get at that into a minute. You're going to need your car when moving to Salem. So there are cars on the road, but it is nowhere near the traffic nightmare that you experience living in a large city, especially if you're coming from a large city that doesn't have maybe the best public transportation that you have to be in your car. My kids are so much happier, which makes us happier in the car. And if you do have to drive the 10 to 20 minutes to get somewhere, you're actually driving, you're moving. You're not just sitting there idling in your car, going crazy, wishing that the cars would move in front of you. That's the other thing I'll say. Drivers here are a lot more friendlier than they are in the big city. I hardly hear the horn honk. People are more patient. People let you in to the lanes. They're not trying to fight you for the lane. And so you'll experience that moving from a big city to Salem. Much better when it comes to traffic. So much less congestion, so many less cars, so many less people. We love that aspect. Now, if you are coming from a big city that has a great public transportation system, you will be disappointed when you come to Salem because we really don't have it. It's too small to have any type of real subway system or even above rail system. We do have a bus line, the Chariots. It takes you to places throughout the city, but never really to where you need to go. So you end up needing a bike or a scooter once you get off the bus. So I would say if you are someone that hops on public transportation and don't like to drive, then Salem's not going to be the right spot for you. And if you don't have a car, you're going to need a car. If you're someone who likes to bike everywhere, it's not the most bike-friendly city. Again, we're kind of spread out when it comes to smaller city. Now, if you live in the downtown area, and there's not many places to live downtown, which is kind of odd. Again, coming from a big city, there are plenty of options. Your high-rise condos, your apartments. When it comes to Salem, there's only a few buildings where you can actually either buy a condo or rent out an apartment. Then you don't need a car as much to get into the downtown area, and you've got a number of amenities close enough to where you can probably just have a bike. But for the most part, you are going to be driving, but just remember, you're not going to be driving in traffic. It is beautiful. Now, we are also close to the I-5 freeway, which will take you north up into Portland and eventually into Washington. And then you can jump south into going to Corvallis or Eugene, where the two biggest universities in Oregon are. So you are close to that. When the I-5 does get backed up, if there's an accident, it can affect your drive. Because we are surrounded by farmland, it stretches pretty far out. So if you are trying to get to the next bigger city, it's going to take you a little while. It takes about an hour or so to get into Portland, a little bit more of that to get into Eugene. And in between that, you've got smaller towns, smaller cities, smaller than Salem. So if there is congestion on the freeways, it could take you a while from there. I do want to speak to the driving habits in Oregon. I noticed that too. I kind of alluded to it earlier in this portion of the video where people are friendlier. But sometimes coming from a big city, the big adjustment as far as driving goes was there's really no sense of urgency in Salem. When you're in a big city, you're trying to get places, and I think it's because you're stuck in traffic and you just want to get out and maneuver and get to where you want to be, that you just feel like you're always in a rush. You want to lane hop, you want to cut through neighborhoods, you want to look at your Google app and your Waze app to figure out the best and quickest route. Well, when you're in Salem, you don't have that. People are driving a lot slower. And so if you're the one weaving in and out of traffic, you're the one that comes off looking pretty bad. That's not the norm here. So I noticed my pace of driving has slowed down. I also know I've become a little bit more of a calm driver, and I truly enjoy that. I don't feel like on edge. I'm not white knuckling my steering wheel. I'm also not constantly looking at an app to weave in and out of different neighborhoods to beat the traffic. And you'll notice that too when you're in Salem. There's only a handful of roads that you're going to frequent pretty often. Commercial Street, Liberty Street, Lancaster, Hawthorne. Those are your major north-south streets. And then going east and west, you'd be looking at Capitol, State, Market. And if you pull up a map, you'll see all of this. If you're in South Salem, Kubler. If you're in the north, you're going to be looking at MLK Parkway. So there's really only a handful of streets that you're going to really need to know to get to the major portions of Salem. And that also makes it easier. You're not guessing. You're not having to look up on a map. Now, I was born and raised in the big city, Los Angeles, and I knew the city like the back of my hand. And I still need to pull up maps, Google, Waze, to get to certain places because traffic was so bad. So again, big benefit moving to a small city like Salem. You don't have that at all, and I can tell you, I come home a lot happier. My wife comes home from work a lot happier. My kids are a lot happier because they're not stuck in the car all the time, and so it actually has improved the quality of life for us, and something that you don't necessarily think about until you are pulled yourself out of that big city life and into a small city like Salem. Now, before I get into my next topic, I do want to highlight the cost of living. I have a separate video that addresses all the cost of living when you're moving to Salem, so check that out because that was a big factor and a big difference when moving from a big city to Salem, Oregon. So specifically for that topic, make sure you check out that video on my channel. So this next topic I'm going to get into is community events. Now, coming from a big city, you do have a large amount of events going on. There's always something going on in a big city. The problem for me and for my family was finding access to it and getting there, and then battling the massive amounts of crowd and people and parking just made it a nightmare. We didn't get to really enjoy as many of the events that a large city put on because we didn't want to get out there and deal with the headache of congestion and the people and parking and all of that. And living in Salem, it is a breath of fresh air when it comes to community events. We actually frequent them often. We're always finding something to do, and I feel like the city or private enterprises are putting something on constantly, especially during the spring and summer, and even during the fall and winter, you're going to find some events here. It does rain a ton here during the fall and winter, so it does make it harder to do outdoor events, but you're going to find plenty of indoor events to do during those seasons. And when we were thinking about moving to a smaller city, that was one of the things my wife and I really wanted to make sure that we were going to get, and that was being around community, being surrounded by people that live in the city, that want to be out and go to these activities, go to these events, and enjoy it as much as we do. That's what we really envisioned when moving to Salem, and Salem has not disappointed when it comes to that. And our kids really love it. We love going on the outings with them. They get to experience what Salem has to offer, all of the events. We have the state fair that runs here for 2 weeks out of the year through late July into early August. The people in this city and actually throughout the state come to the state fair in droves. It is such a fun, family-friendly event. We also have the county fair here. It's a little bit smaller, but just as much fun. We have the Ag Fest where people come in and bring all their farming equipment for the kids to climb up on, bringing in all the animals, a lot of agricultural education, a lot of crafts during that time as well at the Ag Fest. Super fun event. We have the Ironman here that goes on annually here. It's held over at Riverfront Park. That's a fun event if you're a sports enthusiast. We've got Hoopla where they close down portions of downtown Salem, and people from all over the world compete in these basketball tournaments. It is a multi-day event. There's hundreds of games going on at the same time. Lots of people out and about cheering on their squad, cheering on their team. They've got food trucks that are out and about. Just, again, another fun family event to go to. They've got concerts in the park and movies at the park during the summer where they put up a big screen over in the park and people from the city come out, lay their blankets out, have a picnic, and just enjoy the beautiful weather that we have here in the summer. A lot of the movies are geared towards kids, so people are bringing their families out. We've got dog shows that happen at the park. We also have an outdoor art show that happens once a year at Bush Pasture Park. It's an awesome event where local artists and artists throughout the state come here, show off their artistry, all sorts of mediums. It's really cool. They've got food, they've got music. Again, a great place if you're an art lover or if your kids love art. Fun event. We got the Awesome 3000, which is another running event here. A lot of it geared towards kids, though. They're the ones running the event. It's a big fundraiser. That's a really big deal here. We've got the holiday lights at the park during the holiday season where they light up Riverfront Park. People come out for that. There's also drive-through holiday light shows throughout the city, which is another fun thing to do. We've got antique markets, Christmas markets, soapbox derby, and so much more. Oh, we also have an event called Make Music Salem that happens in the summer, where if you go downtown, you pretty much has bands and musicians on every corner downtown. It's really cool. People come out, just catch a little show, have a bite to eat. Now, if you go to downtown, a lot of the restaurants have outdoor eating, so you get to enjoy the music, eating your food, sipping a drink, sipping some coffee, whatever it is, but that's a fun day as well in the Salem area. Now, before I get into my next topic, make sure you stay to the end of the video because I'm really gonna summarize what it feels like to move from a big city to Salem, Oregon. Up until now, we've been talking about different tangible things and lifestyle changes and what to expect. But when you're making a move like this from a big city to small city, you may be worried about what it actually feels like, and I'm gonna definitely go over that, especially if you have a family and what that all means. So stay tuned to that for that. Now, our next topic is going to be wine country and farmland. Two things you really can't say when living in a big city. And I absolutely love it. My family loves it. You can drive about 20 minutes away from wherever you are, and then you're surrounded by farms, surrounded by vineyards and wineries. And when I say we're in wine country, I really mean it. There are 700 wineries and vineyards in the Willamette Valley. That's where Salem is located. And it's all really close, and it's beautiful countryside. We specialize in Pinot Noir here, so if you are wine lovers and that's your varietal that you love, Salem is going to be an amazing spot for you. A lot of these places are open to the public, have great tasting rooms, put on really cool events, and again, they're so easy to get to. You can see on the map that's being pulled up right now just on how many vineyards and wineries there are. So if you're wine lovers and you just love that atmosphere, Salem is going to be an amazing option for you, especially if you don't want to live in the rural parts of the Willamette Valley. You don't want acres and acres of land to enjoy the wineries. You can live in a city and still benefit from being surrounded by all these wineries. Now, the other thing I love about this, as I mentioned, you are surrounded by farmland and all of the agriculture here. And my family and I love taking advantage of that, especially during the spring and summer and fall, where we frequent these local farms constantly. A lot of these local farmers designate you-pick sections where you can go there and pick your own fruit. We are always gathering blueberries, strawberries, raspberries, cherries, peaches, apples, you name it, it is there. And I cannot tell you and emphasize how much more fresh fruit tastes pulled right off the vine. It is beautiful. We absolutely love it. And again, a lot of people living in Salem take advantage of this. It's busy, it's frequented, again, not too busy, but it's nice to see people just going out and about, picking their own fruit and enjoying the day. And a lot of these farms also provide different events throughout the year, throughout the seasons. And they also have play structures for the kids and fun kids activities to do besides just picking fruit. And I can say our kids love this activity. It's so much fun for them. It's good family bonding experience. And so when you're just so close to all of this farmland, you got to take advantage of it. And I promise that you will, especially when you come from a big city and you're just not used to that. It is a fun thing to do. A lot of these farms put on really fun fall activities, corn mazes, pumpkin patches, axe throwing. Some of them have petting zoos. You got tractor pull rides, haystack castles, outdoor games, climbing walls. They really make it an attraction. And they do baked goods from the fruit that they pick. So you can get these really fresh pastries or pies that are made on the farm. Some of them have these little cool farm shops that are fun to frequent. So it's a really cool vibe and very different from living in a big city. Also, if you live in certain neighborhoods, you can literally just walk down the street to a local farmer, and a lot of people just put out their fresh eggs or some fresh fruit that they just picked, and they're just offering it to kind of first come, first serve. So that's really cool too. Again, not something that you really experience in the big city. Now I really want to talk about what it feels like to move from a big city to a small city. Again, we talked about the lifestyle and what to expect when it comes to that. But I will say that our quality of life has improved exponentially. It is something that we felt like we were missing being in a big city, and we just didn't feel at home anymore in that big city. We didn't feel like it was a great place to raise our kids anymore. And don't get me wrong, there are still some aspects of the big city that I do enjoy, but I just didn't want to live it anymore. I now want to live in Salem, where I can just drive an hour north to go to Portland if I want the large city feel. I can easily drive to the coast about an hour, hour and a half. I can get to the mountains an hour and a half away. I can get to Eugene and Corvallis for the university sporting events that we really enjoy. Again, all within an hour and a half. So living in Salem, we're super close to anything and everything that we would want, but we get to live a slower paced lifestyle, a place where we feel more comfortable raising our kids, in a neighborhood where our kids can run out and play. And I can't tell you how much that makes my wife and I so happy, much more calm, less worried, that we know that our kids feel safer, that we feel safer. We feel the fresh air that we can breathe in compared to being in smog town when you're living in a big city and cars are just blowing out, billowing smoke, and big trucks running through and just idling, watching brown smoke everywhere, seeing the brown haze everywhere. We just don't feel that and see that in Salem, and the air feels cleaner. We just feel better about it. We feel more relaxed, and we're just happier for the move. Seeing all the green space just makes me feel happy. That is kind of my happy space anyway. I'm someone that needs to be around nature, and I just wasn't getting that in the city. Sure, we've got neighborhood parks, but it's different. When you're here in Salem, the green space, the open space, again, the farmland, it just gives you a sense of freedom that I didn't have. I love passing cows and chickens and horses on my way to different places. To me, that just puts a smile on my face, and my kids absolutely love it. I mean, I'll stop the car, have the windows down, and my kids are mooing to the cows, and they just get a kick out of it. It just feels a little bit more wholesome here. And it's not something that I really understood until I made the move. I visited Salem before I moved here. My brother has lived out here for a few years. I have some other family that lived here. So we were aware of what Salem had to offer. And it wasn't really until I moved out here that I understood why people live in smaller cities and got the heck out of these large cities. Again, there was a time and place for us to enjoy the big city life, but we just aren't there anymore. My family and I are thriving off this small town lifestyle. We are more at peace. We are happier. And if you've liked what you've seen in this video, I think you may be happier as well. Again, comment below why you're thinking about moving from a big city to Salem, Oregon. And if you are thinking about relocating, make sure you reach out to the contact information below. My team and I love helping people move to and relocate to Salem, Oregon. And I personally made that move from a big city, so I will certainly identify and understand and really be able to connect over those shared experiences. So again, make sure you reach out to us at the information below.